I think, how we're doing things and why we're doing them the way we're doing them, and efficient and predictable processes. We're going to reorganize the document. The structure will be more logical and intuitive and organized around core elements. So we will incorporate tables and graphics more and communicate zoning concepts efficiently, show the desired character and application standards, summarize our processes through flowcharts, and summarize our standards tables. This is an example from another community about how their processes work, and you'll notice one thing on here that we really think is a great idea is pre-application meetings, which we've been doing a lot more of those with our developers and with our community, and we find them very, very helpful. Another thing we're asking more often to happen is a pre-application neighborhood meeting. And this would be something where they would go out and meet with the neighborhood prior to trying to do something new in an area.
Who's they?
A developer, someone who was interested in doing something new in our community. We did that with the Publix Center in Indian Hills. They went out and did some neighborhood meetings prior to even breaking ground, and they talked about what they wanted to do and what they wanted to accomplish. We felt it was very, very helpful. You'll see in this community they make it optional. Our hope is that in the zoning ordinance, it will still be an optional thing, but there will be places where we say, okay, if you're doing a major rezoning of property, if you're annexing property into the city that was not there before, we really think you need to go out and meet the neighborhood first. So we will be really strongly encouraging that. This is kind of an idea of what the different zoning districts will look like. Again, this is another community, but each zoning district will start with a purpose statement that explains to you what we want to accomplish. And it will also have a few pictures with it. And these are pictures of what we hope and what we believe these zoning districts will be able to do for our community. We'll have a reference to use standards. This is a section where it tells you where to go in other parts of the code to find things you may need to know about the different uses, particularly a use that has some standards applied to it. This section here will be your density and dimensional requirements. This is where you'll find your setbacks and your parking requirements, that kind of thing. And then reference to other sections in the code will also be provided in here, and that will help you find your way around. If you'll look at this example right here, this shows you a diagram of what they allow in this particular zone. And you'll notice that one thing they're doing is pulling all the buildings up towards the street and putting the parking in the back. That's a trend in development these days, and we anticipate we may see some of that in our new code.
What does that do to the signage?
I think you do a lot more on building signage, or
It's like Bank Street and Second Avenue,
Yeah.
same thing.
and that's a good point. Bank Street and Second Avenue, the development practices of those times, which was the late 1800s, was to build right up at the edge of the right-of-way. So you're right on your sidewalk.
Because most people walk back
Yeah,
there.
yeah, but you walked a
And
lot
they're
more.
starting that now.
And yeah, I walk now.
History always repeats.
Hello,
Hey, sorry I'm late.
you're fine.
I just tried.
Jay, will you get her to show you the slide? And here's this, and there's a sign-in sheet somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Where we are, we're talking about making, what we're trying to accomplish with the zoning ordinance. We've been through the first few slides, and you've got them here. Let's keep going from where we are, and if you have some questions, we are kind of stopping if you really want to ask something during the meeting and trying to make you aware of what's going on. So,
Page you on now.
we are I'm not on the right page. We're on page 10. I am going to take you back just a little bit and show you what the new zoning districts will look like. Let's see
Look
what,
at that building in the lower right-hand corner. Wouldn't that be beautiful on the corner of Bolton and Second? A little mini hotel or something like that.
the zoning ordinance will have actual pictures in it that gives you an idea of what we want to accomplish. It will also have graphics like this that show you where your setbacks will be and how the building might fit on the lot. This is a very interesting example because it shows you the building pulled out closer to the right-of-way. I think there's a little room for signage either right here, Steve, or on the building itself. But they're encouraging parking in the rear to encourage pedestrian access. So this is an example. This document will streamline our review procedures. In the zoning ordinance itself, there will be a section that tells you how to do each one of these things. A zoning text amendment, a zoning map amendment, which is what we call a rezoning today. So if you want to rezone a piece of property, you're doing a zoning map amendment.
You're doing it as a what, map amendment?
Amendment to the zoning map of the city of Decatur.
Okay. So it's already zoned, it's just,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
When we annex a piece of property into the city, we apply a zoning to it probably within the next couple meetings of the city council. An annexation takes approximately 45 days. A rezoning or an applying of a zoning takes about
9 days.
90.
90.
There's some state public hearing requirements and advertising requirements that we have to meet. And all of that will be explained in this section of the code.
That's what it takes now.
Right. You'll see that the different letters and stuff, we're looking at this. This is not, again, this is a first step. There will be a lot of public hearings and a lot of discussions as we get more into the details of the zoning ordinance and we know more that's going to work. So bear in mind that what we're asking for today is community input. And your input will be important to the way this works.
Would, on that list of, and you said it's a draft and you're starting with it, but things like building design and aesthetics, would that be part of this as well? I know it's talking about site development, but also should building aesthetics and all be
Some
part
of that,
this
I
too?
think, as I go through the different zoning districts later in this discussion, you'll see that there are design review criterias and design space and bulk things that will come into play. We've done this a couple times today, like every hour. I think I got 2 hours where people didn't show up. And I've had people, and I will say most of the people have really wanted to see us tighten up. But there have been a few that have wanted to see us not tighten up. So we're
By
going to try
tighten
to
up, you mean make the restrictions
stronger.
stronger?
Or make, not restrictions, make the criteria stronger and something that we can all embrace and like. We're not trying to restrict development for people. We're trying to enhance it. And we're trying to find ways to make it have a positive impact on the community. We want to implement the One Decatur policies. The map you see here is the One Decatur future land use map. A couple of the policies that came out of One Decatur that we'll be trying to achieve with this is to encourage appropriate development downtown, to establish stronger design standards for new development, particularly in key gateways and corridors. Key gateways and corridors are going to include Highway 20, Highway 31, the Beltline, Wood Interior Parkway, that kind of, those roads. We want to support mixed-use development in targeted areas, but we do want to target those areas and make sure we're comfortable with where they are. We have blueberry bread and we have cookies and there's coffee in the back.
Okay,
And
thank
there's
you.
water on
I'm
the
good.
table.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
She just hoped to that cake, it might not go further.
A couple other things that came out of One Decatur is a lot of people would like to see us have more walkable neighborhoods. In the 60s, we eliminated our sidewalk requirements. In 1996, right before my third child was born, we reestablished sidewalk requirements, and we're starting to see it in neighborhoods, but
I'm
it's been
seeing
a
some,
long.
I saw some on Jackson
Yeah,
and the corner.
those, yeah.
Yeah.
They've done some
They're working on it.
improvements with handicapped access and stuff in those areas. City View Estates was built with a sidewalk requirement. Almond Place was built with a sidewalk requirement. So you're seeing them in some of our new subdivisions as well.
In other communities that have that, are they pretty much walking in the communities or using the sidewalks to walk to a, for instance, a park or a mini park or a high school or a
Sometimes
elementary
it's
school?
very important to have destinations, but, and in our community, we had what we called our school park plan, and one of the things we chose as a community to do was to combine our elementary schools and our middle schools with public parks. So Eastwood is a good example, Woodmead is a good example, Julian Harris, Chestnut Grove, Cedar Ridge has the ball fields of Cedar Ridge are parks. Austinville has had improvements made to it. Yeah.
Austin Middle, not Cedar Ridge.
Oh, Austin Middle, right, I forgot.
Just
Yeah,
It's confusing.
it's confusing to
pretty
me.
name for the,
So we have a lot of park property on our school properties, and we combine them so the sidewalks getting to those locations and neighborhoods will be very helpful. I know that in my neighborhood, which is right by Julian Harris, there's a lot of activity in that park now. A lot of people use it, and it's a good thing.
Well, there's something to be said for people getting to know each other. And
Yes.
they'll do more of that with sidewalks.
With sidewalks and with parks and that kind of stuff in the
Community will do
neighborhood.
it.
We want to ensure appropriate development in parts of Decatur located in Limestone County. That's something that really scared us. And I know when you look at this little map here, that map over there, the economy of scale is pretty startling. The property in Limestone County that's in the corporate limits of the city of Decatur is approximately as big as southeast Decatur. It's huge. That much stuff can happen out there, and we want to do it right. We want to modernize our districts and uses and modernize and align our zoning districts with One Decatur. We want to modernize the format for the updated districts. We want to use an additional summary use table. The summary use table will be at the end of the document, and it will do a good job of listing current and exciting new uses as well as old uses. Some of the uses we have in our current zoning ordinance include tanneries. And not tanneries are a use that we deal with in our ordinance, and we may not need that anymore. We do want to use tannery.
Tanners, tell them what a tannery is.
That's what I
He has
said,
no idea.
tannery.
That's what a brewery is, but he has no idea what a tannery is.
Like a tanning booth place?
No, tanneries.
That's going tanning.
That is so cool to have that. A tannery is where they treat animal hides.
to make leather.
Leather.
Okay.
That's what tannery is.
Tan, you've ever heard of them tan your hide?
Yeah, I actually have.
Okay, that was absolutely perfect.
You needed that, didn't you?
Yeah.
You needed a little laughing.
Well, and I needed, that proves why we need to do this, okay? That,
Probably had a lot younger beat these meetings.
we want to use a more robust framework for categorizing and defining uses, and I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. And we want to add and refine standards for specific uses. Our current zoning ordinance has 26 base zoning districts, 8 planned residential districts, and 3 overlay districts. The proposed zoning ordinance will have 20 base zoning districts, 3 planned development districts, and 4 overlay districts. This chart, which you'll find in the zoning ordinance assessment,
29.
yeah, he's got one down there, okay, that we've given you. And you can look at that. That gives you an idea of what the consultant is proposing we do with our existing zoning districts, what he wants to combine, what he wants to delete and replace with something new. And we will be going over all of that if you'll just bear with me for a few minutes. We're going to modernize our districts. The first thing that we want to talk about is consolidating the Ag 1 district and the Ag 2 district. Those are our 2 agricultural districts. The minimum lot area would be 15,000 square feet with a 2.3 dwelling units per acre. In those districts, you will also be able to raise crops. You will have chickens and pigs and cows and horses and other livestock. Those are our agricultural areas. We see the benefit of them. We want to protect them. We're a place where they exist still, and we're lucky we are.
That's like a third of an acre.
Yes, ma'am, the size of the minimum lot
That's the
size is
minimum.
a third of an acre. One thing that we need to remember is when you get into a zoning district, you do not need to build to the minimum standard, that is the minimum. You can go over that. We would encourage you to do that so that you can more easily make your requirements.
This is,
In the case of the ag districts, we have a district now called R1E, which allows you to have horses, but you have to have a certain size lot to be able to have the livestock and animals. If we do this, that will
you
happen.
see it now where the ag one is? It's that mostly up Danville Road and stuff like that. where
There's
most
Ag 1 up
animals-
Danville Road. I've been working with a gentleman on some rezoning. We have a lot of Ag 2 in Limestone County. Chapel Hill Road area has some Ag 2. On the south side, there's Ag 2. On the north side, there's Ag 1. There's a lot of agricultural out Red Bank Road, a lot in your neighborhood and Indian Hills Road. Those are the areas where you're going to see it.
No, can't build a horse farm in the middle of town.
So would our district be called an ag district?
Today, yes, your district is an Ag district.
Uh-oh, we hadn't gotten to the new one.
No, well, we're not looking at new districts today. As I talk, I'll share with you the recommendation for the zoning map, so that you will all know. But when we make changes or when we do the zoning map, the Ag 1, Ag 2 will all go into that new agricultural district. It won't go to a different zoning that would not allow what you're doing today.
Go to Bolton use,
Right.
it stays in ag, but it just,
The R1, R2 areas, they will still be residential, but it's going to have a minimum lot size that's a little smaller than we're accustomed to in R1. But again, you can build bigger lots. You're not required to build to the minimum. That's something that's hard for people sometimes to understand. The two new, these are some of our new base districts they're requiring, or recommending a residential mixed medium density, which would allow for a mix of housing types, single-family, townhomes, and very limited multifamily, probably more along the lines of duplexes or quads. You know, those quads you see where they look like 4 separate buildings because they're on 4 corners. The other one is an RMH, which is a residential mixed high-density district. It will allow for a mix of housing types, including townhomes, multifamily, no single-family detached. The maximum density in the RMH district will be 18 dwelling units per acre. And that's pretty dense as opposed to this 8 dwelling units per acre, which is dense when you're used to living in Ag 1, but not when you're used to living in R2. So, the new consolidated base zoning district will be a residential single-family 10. It will combine or consolidate R1 and R2 residential districts into one district. The minimum lot size will be 10,000 square feet. You can, I can't say it enough, you don't have to build the minimum. We will also be looking at some community, these are commercial zones right now. The CC zone will be a commercial community district. It will consolidate B2 and M1A districts. It will allow for community scale commercial office, recreation, and restaurant developments. It may be integrated with some residential units, but no standalone residential. More of a multifamily, maybe on the 2nd floor or next door, but not freestanding. There will be basic pedestrian amenities required. When you look at the 2 districts we're talking about, B2 and M1A, there's not a lot of pedestrian access, and we're going to look for creative ways to do that in the future. In the case of M1A, the other thing, M1A is the Beltline, just so everybody knows. There were provisions made in that district to allow us to get the frontage roads put in place. And we'll need to continue to find ways to work with that and make that work as part of this new CC district. Then there's the Urban Corridor Mixed Use District. That will combine our 2 newest districts, our RD and RD2, which allow for a mix of uses and do a really creative job of trying to find ways to blend and make 6th Avenue work. One of the things we wanted to do with that was when 6th Avenue was built originally, the development practices were very different from what they are today. And the same 25-foot lots that you find on Sherman Street and Grand Street are going down 6th Avenue. They're about 100 to 120 feet deep. It's those areas. It was the closest we could come. After that, mid-80s-ish, we adopted the National Park Service standards, and we established a way to have a historic preservation commission. And we asked them to look at buildings that were changed or modified on the exterior and apply the National Park Service standards to that. If you want to stay a historic structure, you have to follow the National Park Service standards. That's why they're there. So we have 2 districts where we established a board whose responsibility is to make sure we're doing it. And they're doing that. It drives people crazy, but they're doing that. And they do it really well. I mean, they do. They are a textbook example of doing their best to make this work. I've sat through quite a few of their meetings and been truly impressed with how sincere and how hard they work to do this. So that's an overlay zone, and it's applied to 2 areas. In our community, we have multiple neighborhoods that are on the National Register, but do not have that overlay applied to them. Bank Street, 2nd Avenue are both 2 examples of that. The others, what we all call affectionately the other side of Delano Park, is an example of that. There are 2 neighborhoods over in Northwest. One is called Old Town and one is called West Town that are also on the National Register, but do not have the historic overlay. So that's an overlay zone. The other overlay zone we have in our community is called the Sidewalk Cafe Zone. That applies to downtown. You know, we talked a few minutes ago about when people built at that time, they built right at the edge of the right-of-way. So as soon as you step out of a restaurant in downtown, you're on public property. We looked at examples of other communities, how they dealt with that and ways to do it. And we developed a way that they could come out and maintain the 5-foot pedestrian sidewalk, but directly in front of their building, they could enclose it and have a sidewalk cafe on public property. And they get permission. There's a permission process. There's a committee set up that helps us make public space usage in downtown work. And that is another overlay zone that we have. Arts and entertainment is actually also an overlay zone. I forgot about that one. Arts and entertainment was adopted based on a state law that allowed people in a limited fashion to move around in the public space or outside with an alcoholic beverage. We adopted an ordinance. We leaned very, very heavily on Savannah, Georgia when we developed it. The really cool thing about it is a lot of other communities that were at our ordinance used it. So we were one of the first. These Decatur cannot tell you what a great job our private sector partners on that have done. Our merchants are diligent in making sure it works, and that helps. So, this is what the summary use table would look like in the zoning ordinance. There is an example of this at the end of this document as well. Keep in mind when you're looking at this, this is from another community. They're just giving us an example to look at. So this does not apply to anything we have in our current code or our proposed code. It could, but it doesn't today. So if you wanted to look and see how it's divided to household living, group living, community services. So say you wanted a community, to build a community center, a private one like a YMCA type thing. These are the different districts you could do it. P stands for permitted by right. C stands for allowed, subject to conditional use permit. So we'd want to talk to you about parking impacts and lighting impacts and that kind of thing. And then A stands for allowed, subject to provisional use permit, or allowed subject to approved or planned master plan. An example of that we've talked about a couple times in different meetings, when Central Methodist acquired some of the property around them and put parking lots in it, there was a real problem with the lighting in the parking lots because it spilled over onto the neighbors' yards and it made it difficult for the neighbors. So we had to back up and look at better ways to do that. Fortunately, they were very, very happy to work with us and accommodate their neighbors. And we have some, you know, the parking lots are not ugly. They've done a good job
Yeah,
of it.
they have a good buffer too.
Mhm.
It has
We would like to improve the quality of development, add standards for mobility, circulation, and connectivity. We'd like to update our parking and loading standards and add form and design standards. Currently in our parking requirements, we don't actually say you have to have an asphalt parking lot. Mostly we get asphalt parking lots anyway, and we would like to go to some form of hard surface. When I've been in other places recently, I've also seen some of the permeable surface parking. Surprisingly, that looks much better than I thought it would. So that's another example of ways we could do that. We'll be looking at building orientation and configuration, building size, and building facades, which again, design requirements. There will be, you know, we don't want long blank walls. We'll look for articulation on those, that kind of thing. A lot of that is explained in the zoning documents. This again shows you the example, or one of the examples we talked about a few minutes ago, about moving the buildings toward the street more. We want to add neighborhood compatibility standards, enhance the landscaping and exterior and lighting standards, and refine our sign regulations. We want to improve the quality of development. We think we've had some great development, but we think we could raise the bar a little bit and see some good things happen. Target Public's two good examples of that. We
They
want
have
to,
lights that kind of shine down, don't they?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
of the wildlife.
yes ma'am. We want to enhance our open space set-aside standards, add agricultural compatibility standards, and incentivize the green building practices. We want to encourage green building, but we also want to be able to say, if you're going to put these solar panels on your building or build a windmill, where you're going to put it and how it's going to work. There's a balance there that's important. The annotated outline is important because it shows how the new regulations will be organized. It includes major sections and subsections. Each section includes a summary of what will be included and notes the existing regulations that will be carried forward and new and modified regulations. The other thing I really liked when I was looking at the annotated outline with a couple other people is it references you to where in the assessment the document addresses those things. For example, site plan review is shown in the annotated outline and then reference why we need to do what we need to do and how to change it. And then we're back to this. Again, we're in task 3. They're getting ready to start drafting. We're gonna send them comments from these meetings. They will prepare a public review draft. That public review draft will be made available to the public online. Our steering committee will be going through it. Our steering committee I feel really good about that group. We worked really hard to select them. We have a good representation of commercial builders, residential builders, sign people, residents of our community, engineers, attorneys, young, old. We're very diverse. We're really excited about how that's going to work. So that's where we are today. And now we can do questions and answers.
I think one of the biggest things that I hear is that they're hoping with this is the frustration from developers, how they will kind of know in the beginning, and there's not such a long period of time between can we do this and the time it's told, yes, you can go ahead and do it. And I may be hearing it, well, you know, when people come to me, but they just
Yeah, well, there's a lot of,
they don't understand the backside of it, and I'm hoping this takes us on the backside of it.
and I'm hoping that there'll be a lot of information in this document. You know, you've seen some of the streamlined procedures, the explanations for how this will work. I'm hoping that this document will help them understand some of that. Sometimes the development is gonna require a rezoning, and a rezoning takes up to 90 days. They may need site plan review. It's not a good idea to start your site plan review before you have the right zoning in place. You can, but how do you review the site plan without knowing what's allowed?
Are those kind of things going to be documented in the new?
Yes, they will.
Okay, so someone would know, I want to do something, what are the steps and what's the right order?
Yes, those will be in the document. We try to explain that, but sometimes it's so frustrating to hear, like you're saying, okay, you want to do this in this location, but before you do it, it's zoned ag, we need to zone it to something that's going to allow that. That's going to take this long, and then we need to do site plan review. A lot of times we need to do subdivision of the property to make it work, and it can get sticky. It's not hopefully it'll be better explained in here. The blend with the subdivision regulations will still be something that we have to work on and work through, but our intention is to do that.
One thing that I was wondering is if to make sure that we kind of examined what the most of the zoning variances that we have now for both residential, signs, business, whatever it is. I would hope that we have looked at why you have to go down there the most and streamline those or eliminate that in the most
We're gonna,
possible way.
the sign ordinance is a biggie, and we hear about it a lot. We're gonna work really, really hard to streamline that and make it something that the community and the sign companies can support and work with.
In the beginning, it went from 4 pages to 17 pages, and I don't know what it went to from there, but that was 25, 30 years ago, whenever I was involved with that. That it just, how many pages is it now, do you know?
I have it right here, I can tell you. Goes from 83 to 101. So that's,
So it's still 17.
yeah.
And the other thing that I don't know if it's with, I don't know if you call it zoning or what you call it, but there's a lot of people that work from home that are plumbers that have trucks or electricians that have trucks. It's just the guy that used to have an office and he no longer has an office. He works from his house. And I think we see that more and more and more.
That
But you
comes
still have to
through.
go through a lot of steps to do that. And I'm afraid some people are skipping other steps because they just get frustrated. Well, I'm not going to do all that stuff. Is there a way that we can make that
That's a use
simpler in
permitted on
certain
appeal
cases?
today, and that's something that we will be looking at. That's even something that the consultant noticed in our documents and what we look at. It's not really hard to get a home occupation so much as you do have to go through the Board of Zoning Adjustment to do it and then get a business license. Your home occupation cannot, no one should be able to tell that you have a home occupation in your home. We have a lot of lawn care services. One of the key questions that the board always asks is your equipment the same as what I might have in my garage? We had a riding lawnmower, push mower, weed whacker, all that is in our garage. We got rid of the riding recently, but all of that is in our garage today. Is that the same thing your lawn care service will have? If it's more than that, we want to find a way to deal with that. The other thing we encourage in the case of lawn care services is that they have an off-site storage for some of their equipment if they have a lot.
But what I would like to see is if, when it comes to this thing that I'm talking about home stuff, is if they meet a certain criteria, if you don't use anything other than your regular vehicle,
Yeah.
if there's nothing else coming to this, if you're just using a computer at your house and you're doing this and you're using your personal car and all of that, I don't see why we even have to do that step. They should be able to get a business permit that day if they meet certain criteria. Now, I understand you were not wanting for contractors or all this other kind of stuff that you don't want to rent equipment, things like that. But I feel there should be a certain criteria that you can do, that if your occupation is not interfering with that in any shape, form, or fashion, if you meet X, you should be able to just get a permit.
And that is something that we're talking about, adding and changing and amending. I don't want to overcommit. I think you should send me an email that says that so I can forward it up. But I will say that Clarion has said they feel like we need to do that. So I think we'll be looking for an administrative method of approving home occupations.
You understand one
Yeah,
thing?
and like you said, there's even been some discussion about that already.
I have one question, and Wally, you may be the one to have to answer this.
Both of you back, he's walked out.
When,
She's calling on you.
quit hobbling and come in here.
Are you okay?
You're not,
Yeah, I just takes me long to get that other leg moving.
when you've been standing.
It's all
up
that
too long.
copying.
When somebody comes down, we are required by law, if we have more than 5 employees, to do an E-Verify. Why isn't the city required to do an E-Verify when they issue a business license?
I don't know the answer to it, but I think some of it got killed through some court decisions. Because some of that was in some of the, remember Gary Hammonds did some things, okay? And some of that got voted or court ruled you couldn't do. I'm not sure if that was one of them, but I'm thinking it was, because we used to do some of that. We do it when we do bid work. It's in there.
When you hire people, do you do that for the city?
I'm not the HR, so I don't know what all they do.
I would like to
They
know
probably
that.
do, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Boy, I'd be willing to bet against it.
It's in the, if we don't, it's because the courts wouldn't let us do it, okay? It'd be my remember? Because I know there were a number of things that we were doing within the business license that I know they had to quit doing, and it was a result of Gary's bill, and then a lot of that got gutted through the courts. I could be a little bit wrong, but probably not totally, you know. But I'm not in the license all, so I don't know all the details of it. But I do see some of the bid stuff, and I think there's an E-Verify in there when they do bid work, I think, okay.
Well, I know if there's federal dollars in it, you have to E-Verify.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah, and
But
a lot
does
of that
the
is.
city, for the people that you hire, like for road work and things like that, the city does, city maintenance.
Well, if we do a job, you know, if you're talking about,
I'm not
that's
talking
the-
about private contractors coming in and bidding on it and doing it. I'm talking about the city, the people
well,
that work for the
that's
city.
bid out, and so that bid work,
No, people that work for the city.
well, that goes to the personnel. We don't have, yeah,
But
that's
do they
HR.
have to do
Like I told you,
E-Verify?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Because you employ more than 5 people.
I don't know if there's a court order that we do it, but we're also a government agency that sometimes doesn't have the same kind of things we can do to put on.
That has nothing to do with this, but
But
to
I-
me,
I would
it's sauce
suggest
for
you
the goose
call
and sauce
HR.
for the gander.
No, I can ask Rochelle, she'll be back, but I don't know. When we are hiring them, we don't see it, I mean, that's not something that people want to do. When I'm with Karen, when we're interviewing, we don't look at that. But they're just hope we don't ask the wrong questions in an interview.
Which scares them a little when it's me.
Yeah, we do take training on that, and, but, anyway, I can find out for you, Jody. I just really don't know.
I bet Arthur might know.
Probably not.
No?
He don't know what we do in HR.
No, I mean, if there's a law against y'all doing that.
Oh,
The,
I don't know. You ask.
That's my primary concerns, but for what I'm hearing.
Well, I know Old Decatur is concerned with how it's gonna affect them and the historic district, but it looks like it's gonna be a lot in favor of the historic
There will
district.
be no